All right. Welcome to the start of a very special, absurdly ambitious for us series on the Jankyard, in which we're going to be talking to members of the community about the community we're building and what's brought them to the game, what keeps them playing the game, what they find meaningful about it. So, yes, the people who like to talk about silly cut the strings strategies are now going to try and talk about community building. I don't know if this is the best idea, but it's an idea we're going after, and it comes from a place of deep love and care for the game. So we are kicking it off with a very special pair of guests. We are recording this in Pride Month. We may not actually be able to release this in Pride Month, but we thought we should talk about, given the month, what it means to build an inclusive community that celebrates everyone's identity. And so Nick, Nick Conley, the lead designer of Ashes, has agreed to join us. And so has Flora Snow, who is fresh off of her Rookie of the Year award as granted by Killer Cactus unilaterally, but we all agree, and has become a pillar of the community, and a really sensitive and inclusive voice on issues like gendering hope correctly, for example, and why that's important. So really excited to have this conversation, and really glad that Nick and Flora agreed to take us up on it. So thought we could start just at a high level about how we make the community as inclusive as possible for new players in general from all identities, like just in terms of what the experience is of getting people on board in the game. And this is something that both of you have invested a ton of time and effort in. So, and I should say, by the way, that this is Schmendrix talking. Nick is also, or sorry, the treatment. I shouldn't give your real name. Treatment is also here with me.
He's outed me. Hello, everyone.
Yeah, so I'll toss it to you, Nick Conley, first on this question. But Nick, you've been a huge force behind designing AshCon to bring new players in the game, which has been the place where we've seen the biggest influxes of new players and irregular players, at least from the online community, jump in. Flora, you've also just organized a new Sunhold webcam league. I just played my first game. It was great, to try and take the place of the Team Covenant League. So ask each of you, Nick first, how are we doing on bringing in new players? Like, what are you seeing in terms of what the new player experience is at this point?
I think it's been a really good time lately. I think the introduction of Red Rains mode has done a lot to let people try the game that may not have otherwise. And I've definitely seen an influx of new members to the community, especially becoming like regulars around the Discord, talking about the game in every which way. So that's always really reassuring to see new people coming in, especially off the release of a pretty ambitious new project. So I've been pleased to see that, and seeing different events being built even around some of what Red Rains has brought, like the deck building restrictions can be applied to a PvP tournament, which Dijon of Ash Techie fame, I believe, is organizing. And that's been cool to see. And just a lot of stories of people playing the game physically. I mean, Discord is where we all group up as kind of our worldwide Ashes community, but the anecdotes about people playing in person are definitely prevalent.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. It's been really fun to see people jump in, and there's the PvE channel in the Discord is always hopping with people bringing custom stuff, giving game reports. It's really cool to see. Flora, what about you? What are you seeing as our reigning Rookie of the Year? Are you what's your sense of the new player experience right now?
Yeah, definitely, definitely noticed a lot of new players jumping in with PvE, which is super cool to see. Some of them are kind of making the jump to PvP. Some are content to just keep playing Red Rains. That's still cool. You mentioned I started up the new webcam league that just started. We're in the first week of season one here, so I don't know how many people have managed to get their games in, but I'm really hoping that fills some of the gap that the Team Covenant League is leaving behind, because that was a really great place for people who wanted to play the game and play with their physical cards and didn't want to necessarily jump in too much to competitive. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how I wanted to run Sunhold League and how competitive I wanted it to be, and realized that it really needs to just be like a no stakes thing. There are a lot of people looking for that.
Yeah, I'm glad it was no stakes because Shadowfire stopped me, and I found the only deck I had built, and I couldn't remember what I was thinking when I put it together. But I took the time to put 30 physical cards together, and it's what I had, so I played it, but it was rough. So thank you for keeping it low stakes. What? So Flora, I mean, obviously the new player experience is different now. People coming in via PvE. What brought you to Ashes originally? Like, how did you find it? What appealed to you about the game?
So I had friends who played Magic, and I've always been interested in like the concept of Magic and like a fun dueling card game, but like the concept of actually like Magic was dreadful, and I did not want to play Magic. I didn't want to get into all of the baggage that I think comes with Magic. So I just kind of looked up what other games were around, and I saw Ashes, and something about it really grabbed me. Definitely the release model that's not packs and is, just buying all the cards was definitely a great thing to me, and I think dice are fun.
Oh yeah.
Dice are fun, objectively.
Dice are fun.
Nick, I wonder if you can talk about what your aspirations are for the community of Ashes. You're really intentional about how you're building it, and I think we've all noticed in the way that you use card design and art direction, lore, that you're pulling a lot of levers, I think, to what seems like an intentional way, but would love to hear you just talk a little bit about what it is you're trying to build community-wise with Ashes.
Sure. From the ground up, a big goal of mine had always been accessibility to the game. And I think the release model kind of reflects that. I think it's all a pretty good deal or attainable to grow your collection as you see fit and be able to play with multiple people out of one product, and expanding that idea with PvE, of course. So I just want everyone to enjoy this game that I fell in love with when it first came out. And there's a lot of different ways to go about doing that. And it's great to see the community kind of creating what they want as well. And one thing that I want to help out with that is offering more prize support to tournament organizers. I got this huge box behind me of extra Team Covenant promos since they closed their league. I talked to Steven and he's like, do you have any use for these? And I'm like, I'm sure I can find some people that would like that. So
Flora's just hoping there's an Aerodel in there. I know she is. She's just, please say there's another. Oh, yeah, that's true. You did get it finally.
It's all the rest of them that
I'm sure there is one in there. I think we printed like 1,000 packs of each of the promos when we did the print run for Team Covenant, and they did not have 1,000 members playing. So I just need to get myself together and start shipping those out to people or figure something out, because I don't need to be sitting on all these. So more the merrier. I mean, I do know that like prize support is very exciting when there's like a limited edition or special quality to it. But I've also been on the side where I'm like, oh man, I didn't get that one promo and I'm going to be missing out on that. So I just want to throw them everywhere. And Gen Con will certainly be a place for that. I'll have everything I got there and giving it out for the tournament. So come on down to Gen Con.
This is going to be our most listened to episode just on the basis of the discovery that there's like 960 or so packs.
Yeah.
All of those promos.
If we can just do an AshCon every month for the next year, that'll hit with 50 people, let's say.
Perfect.
That would be good. We could get through a lot of them. So you mentioned like part of your design is intentional, and I think we talked about this the last time we had you on, but in terms of the design of characters and the lore that you've added, especially more recently with some history on Brennen and Hope being, well, I guess technically not new anymore. We're well past that, but still one of the more recent Phoenixborns introduced. How important is it to you, and how, I guess, intentional is it when you're designing new cards, and especially if and when new Phoenixborn come along, to design with intentional representation, however you see sort of that being described, and in the many facets, obviously, that Ashes already has a lot of diversity. I don't play really that many games, but as far as I know, Ashes is quite diverse in the character set of the Phoenixborn.
For starters, I really have to credit Isaac for having this level of intentionality with respect to this topic since 2015. And I mean, how much the world has changed and time has passed since that. He really was, I think, a pioneer in making representation a primary focus of board game design, and he continues to do so. As I see his next design coming out, I met up with him recently and got to play test his Wild Gardens games, and I'm like, oh, these characters are just so cool and trendy looking and very diverse and fun. So I love his focus on that. So when the torch was passed to me, I made it a point to try my best to continue that. And, from whatever point of view I have, whatever group identities I consider myself a part of, is only a single perspective, and that's not the entirety of the community that we have. And it's just important, as I'm designing characters, to make sure I'm expanding beyond what I know as myself. So with Hope in particular, there had not been a non-binary Phoenixborn to my knowledge, and I guess I revealed that through just the preview article referring to Hope with they them pronouns. And I did that with intentionality because the people that identify that way are a part of my life and a part of my community, and they deserve to see themselves reflected in this game that we all enjoy. And it made an impact. It started conversations. It affected the way people spoke and communicated with each other on Discord. It was important, and I don't think we have to exclude our hobbies from such topics, and that respect in which we treat the characters in the game extends to the way we respect each other within our community. So I thought that was appropriate and important kind of boundary to expand to.
Yeah, it's great, Nick. Thank you.
Yeah. And Flora, from a player perspective, and also as a very vocal member of our community, and vocal, I guess, defender, I guess you might say, of the Hope character and the proper use of pronouns, how do you relate to the representation in Ashes, or how important is it to you, and how different is Ashes perhaps compared to other games that you might engage in, or other gaming communities that you might engage in?
I think one of the big things with Hope was just like, as I was like finding the game and trying to decide if it was a game I wanted to play, and seeing them that be a canonically non-binary character, like, was just like a little sign to me of like, oh, this is a game made by people who presumably like actually care about trans rights. There's always the risk that that's not the case and it's just, throwing it in there. But, presumably, and of course you do, and a good chance that the community hopefully takes that well and is a supportive community. And so just seeing them just be a character as I'm coming into this game was just like a nice bit of comfort, knowing that most likely like this is going to be a good supportive community, which is it's a daunting thing sometimes joining a new community. And I think tabletop gaming and card gaming is generally a really welcoming community, but there are definitely pockets of it that aren't. So having that was really just really nice to be there. And that is a big part of why I am so adamant on always trying to correct people if they do misgender hope, which generally is coming from just like making a little mistake and not any sort of malice, but just trying to be vigilant, because even though they are, a fictional character that is not really capable of being harmed by this, there are non-binary people who it really matters to them, and it's seeing that respect shown to even fictional characters is very important.
Yeah, I mean it struck me. I've been part of conversations, in the Ashes Discord server about trying to correct pronoun use and elsewhere. And it does feel like a really valuable way, not just beneficial to the people who are being represented in the game, but beneficial to all the rest of us who have, I'm a cisgender, heterosexual, white guy. And I think it's really valuable to give me a space where that gender identity is put front and center. I have a space where I can talk about it and remind myself why it's important to use people's preferred pronouns, and also recognize the impact it has on others. But it is still, like you said, it's a fictional character. And so if someone makes a mistake, you haven't alienated a fellow member of your community in that exact moment, but it still creates a very real learning opportunity. So it is, I think to me, it's always struck me as really valuable, not just for the people who are finding representation, but for all of the rest of us who want to be allies, to have a way of really using this language, getting used to using they, them pronouns, which is just unusual for some folks if they don't have non-binary folks in their lives, to give them a place to do that.
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, at some point in my life, there was the first time I came across the concept of non-binary identity, and it takes time to process that and understand that. And if this is a way to present that to people that haven't seen it or heard of it yet, or have any kind of negativity towards it, it's, I think, an opportunity to reconsider that. And our community really champions those values, and I think there's good social reinforcement when you see everybody respecting this. You want to extend that to yourself as well, and there's just no reason to be mean.
I mean, yeah, obviously it's simple to say, but unfortunately, especially in a lot of gaming communities, maybe more so in online video games, slurs and other forms of homophobia are often used, especially over voice chat. And so I'm just wondering, and this is an open question to all of you, what do you think it is, either about card game or board game communities in general, or maybe even just Ashes specifically, that lends itself to being more inclusive, even though, for the most part, all of us play online? I mean, it is a physical card game, and sometimes we're fortunate to play physically, but it's still by and large an online invisible person on the other side of the game, and sometimes not even voice chat being involved. So what do you think it is about this Discord community, about the Ashes community, that lends itself to being more inclusive?
I mean, definitely just even though with Ashes we are mostly playing online, it's a tabletop game, and that the history on that is playing in person with people, which is very different from like a Call of Duty lobby where you've got some anonymous stranger and you're never going to have to talk to him again once the game ends, and you can be as mean as you want and have no real consequences. And just even though we're playing online, I think that's why I think that's a big part of like tabletop gaming being generally such a welcoming place, is because it is really about like building up communities with people in a way that like online video games are not always.
I think another special thing with Ashes Reborn in particular is it was a product of 2020. And at that time, social connection was really valuable. And we had an online community with a shared interest. And you don't want to lose that. Communicating with other people and feeling something joyful, like it was just super important at that time. And I'm glad to see that so many people have kind of settled into the Discord around here, and we all know each other quite well just from playing games with each other over the years it's been already. So I think maybe that has another special factor in how we got to where we are today.
Yep. I do think there is something to the fact that, it's you can't be an anonymous, like Flora said, you can't be an anonymous bomb thrower in a tabletop game. You're going to have to own your points of view, and there does seem to be something special that was created in relaunching the game in the midst of the pandemic, which has to be one of the scariest from an economics point of view, scariest moments to launch a card game. But that's the moment in which I found it. And, I found it through Team Covenant videos, and it was really meaningful to me to find almost immediately such a welcoming Discord community. I mean, Matt Bowers was very cheerful while he stomped me
Oh, yes.
repeatedly on Tabletop Simulator, but super nice about it.
Of course.
And so that really sets the tone.
I love Matt.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about Hope and the decision to introduce them as a non-binary character, or at least using they, them pronouns. Brennen has a more complicated history, I think. And I feel like her identity is still evolving in some ways. And I'm curious both to hear from Flora about how you read that character, and then Nick, where you see that character going. I mean, we've seen in Jericho some big character development over the course of a couple releases of Ashes, which is weird to say about a card game, but we've got precedent for it. So Flora, would love to hear you reflect.
Yeah. Brennen is very complicated. I hesitate to call them like actual trans representation necessarily, but in a way they definitely are. I think the most meaningful thing right now is it feels like where he's at as a character right now is very, very much in a place of being able to kind of question his gender and determine that more for himself. And I have been using just any all pronouns for them, just kind of whichever one comes to my head is what I've been doing recently. Just the first one I grab is the one I use. But I think that's really special as like a place for a character to be. That was, I mean, for context, I started coming out just under 2 years ago now. So I was there not too long ago, and it was like a really like exciting and also terrifying time in my life as I was kind of working through that myself. And I love seeing that in her, and that's what I see where she's at right now is that, because of course so much of her story is also tied to trauma, and trauma specifically tied to her gender. And I think it's a fine line sometimes with that kind of story to not accidentally walk it into like, oh, trans people are trans because of trauma, which is obviously not true. But I think it is generally fair to say that most trans people, and honestly most people in general, have some kind of trauma that to work through. And I think it's really special seeing them in a place to heal from that trauma and really be whoever they want to be.
Yeah, I'm really glad you were a part of the discussion, Flora, on Brennen, because this kind of all came to surface with the release of the Corpse of Vero set, where Brennen was re-released, and the questions inevitably came up, and there were certain understandings of Brennen's story based on like interviews with Isaac and like what was written about Brennen on like the packaging and like 1.0. So it was a very like muddied and confusing story of what was going on with Brennen. And I was kind of, I had to reflect on that as I was re-releasing this character and kind of taking these re-releases as an opportunity to develop these characters. I didn't want to keep doing more Phoenixborn right now when we have such a beloved cast of characters already. I felt like it was an opportunity to go deeper with what we had, and Brennen being a really challenging character to figure all that out with. I even had a phone call with Isaac to get more information about it and what he thought on it, and he gave me the blessing to go ahead and write Brennen as my character now. So it was all a lot to figure out, and I couldn't do it alone. It really took that community conversation to understand everybody's understanding of Brennen, and is any way to refer to Brennen disrespectful, or what? Is there anything problematic we're navigating or kind of tokenizing with Brennen? So all that to say, I'm happy with where we landed with any pronouns being acceptable for Brennen, and not kind of assuming a trans identity for them, and not what else? Not it. Basically, I think it gives Brennen autonomy to not be put into any kind of box or understanding by other people, and it's really that freedom for that character to be who they want to be, and pronouns are just a piece of that. But I think going beyond that, the concept of Brennen's new card, Change of Heart, kind of foregoing the violence of Spirit Burn, was something interesting that I wanted to try out.
One thing that has interested me, or maybe even surprised me, being part of the Discord community, as well as even the Team Covenant Discord, is how often new members ask about the lore of the characters in the game. Like, to me, I'm perhaps more mechanics oriented, and that's what pulled me into the game. But and the first time I thought, oh, that, some people are just more interested in that. But very often people come in and are craving the lore and the history of the Phoenixborn and the world of Argaia. And this is a little shout out to our local member, Oxirador, who has compiled all of the little tidbits of lore from both 1.0 and Reborn, and everything that has ever been written on a package or in a rule book or even on the cards themselves, which is awesome. And effectively now we have it all on our wiki,
I love that.
which is really cool. But it's really neat when it's all of a sudden all brought together to see that bigger world and that bigger picture. And obviously it's not nearly complete or even very full for many of the characters. What do you see as part of the game design? Like, how important is that to you? Is it sort of world first and then here are the things that come about? Or are you more interested in, like, here's how things will just fit in naturally to what is already established?
So I kind of enjoy the softer world building elements that Ashes has, and I know that's probably unsatisfying for a number of people to hear, but it's not a strong suit of mine, and I kind of just will create characters as they come to mind, and where I think, oh yeah, I could see them being here. It's not something that, like, I put a lot of, like, revision and deep thematic connections, interlinking things. But I mean, I definitely have a picture in my mind of the settings we're at for each release. And especially with the Red Rains releases coming up, they're more explicitly in a city within the world. So kind of each release has the name of the city that they're fighting in. So like the Corpse of Veros. Veros is Noah's city, and then the Frostwilds in the upcoming release is kind of the region outside of Rin's area. So I do like kind of doing the world building through visual on the cards, and it's really fun to build those. But I mean, even that can be tricky to do because we work with multiple artists and pieces come as they come over the span of months. So it's kind of hard to orchestrate that all together when I also am, like, primarily working on, like, card design and making it fun and then balancing it. So I wish I could do more with it. I don't really know how to yet. I really like the writing that Mr. Bistro, our writer on staff, does when we do these releases. He did this really cool series leading up to the Red Rains release with these just different excerpts from around the world. And I think there's something definitely enjoyable about there being a mystery there of who such and such is, or what even the world looks like. What's the level of technology around in different places? That I think there's something enjoyable there. But Ashes very much reads like an anime, and there's a desire for, like, all of it to be connected and laid out and understood to some degree, and I totally get that.
Yeah, some of those pieces were dark. I think there's one in the kitchen or whatever with
God,
bodies everywhere. I was like, whoa, that is a heavy bit of writing right there.
He can definitely crank out the horror writing like nobody else. So I was pretty shocked reading that one, but I was like, all right, go for it.
In terms of level of technology, we know there are coffee shops because of Shepherd of Lost Souls, everyone's favorite barista.
I like the glasses. Sue me.
I also like the glasses. It's such a classic gag. I think
Yeah.
Impossible German's the real hater of Shepard.
Nah.
I feel like there are a ton of really interesting stories to tell about our guy and its people. And I mean, what I find so fascinating about like what the art has done is that I do feel like they're just some weird character. Like it does not feel like a generic fantasy setting. Like you have refused all calls to put a traditional dragon in. I mean, Corpse of Eros got pretty as close as we're probably going to get to actually seeing a dragon, but like we don't have real dragons. We have donut dogs, or I guess they're dogs with singularities on their backs and mirror spirits. I don't know. Like
Look, I'm not responsible for that one.
Yeah, I still don't know what that's supposed to be.
Accretion discs.
who knows what they are, but I think our guy feels like a rich world to do world building in, and I would love if I ever quit my full-time job, maybe I'll get into some fanfic, but it just feels like there's so many stories to tell. I hope people lend a hand.
Well, so throw it back to you and Flora as players, and well, Shmen as part of playtest group as well. Where do you guys see either gaps or potential, at least, for expanding, like whether that's further, inclusive Phoenix-born designs, or which characters would you like to see explored more in upcoming backstories for Red Rains?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely open for suggestions or wish lists for where we want the upcoming Phoenix-born to be going. I'm working on the Divine art direction and the Illusion deck design not too far after that.
I am definitely invested in seeing what gets done with Hope. There's not, with how light the lore is, I don't know that there's a whole lot of room to really like do any like deeper exploration of there being non-binary. But I am excited to see, definitely, since Hope and Vicky are going to be in that same set, I am looking forward to what that can be, because I think the fact that they are old friends, acquaintances, something gets introduced in Hope's set, and that's just a really cool thing to explore.
Or were they friends?
Yeah.
Is it just a
something.
time illusion? Nobody knows.
Oh, Keepsake is the interesting card, I guess, between Keepsake and Memory Theft. There's a lot of potential confusion as to what memories are real and what actually happened to them in their backstories. Because Keepsake, I think, is the one that shows them together in the room, right? And then Memory Theft is very similar, but it's Leo taking, at least in this case, Vicky's memory away or implanting something. Who knows?
Yeah, I love that it's not clear.
That's some lore implications if you really dive into it.
Yeah.
I think that level of mystery for illusion magic specifically is just really cool, and it's good not to have answers when it comes to that magic type, and I think that it really adds to kind of the dark fantasy tones that Ashes has, despite having like really colorful art. There's some really interesting dark themes in there too.
I mentioned one a long time ago. There was a whole conversation about when Hope came out where future designs could go and what was available. And one that I had thought about was, given that the whole story of the Phoenix-born and the Chimera, there's war, but they're all in perfect health seemingly. And I always thought might be interesting to have a Phoenix-born that was designed as either differently abled or one that had suffered sort of like a war veteran, right? Had suffered some sort of permanent injury, and sort of it would start from that point moving forward. to further cover sort of, different representations of people and in the world of Argaia.
Yeah, I've thought about that too, and I feel like I have more research to do before I feel capable to make any kind of character design like that. I can't represent what I am not before talking to others and trying to understand it and getting opinions like that. So if anybody has any information on that and would like to have a conversation with me, my Discord's always open. But because I don't always know. Can you just create characters to represent different types of people without fully understanding it? That there's certainly probably ways that it can be done wrong, and I just want to make sure I'm doing it with an informed lens.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of room for some good disabled rep in the game potentially. Especially, I do think like fantasy genre does often kind of have bad disabled rep or just limited to none. I know one of the tropes that I'm really tired of is the sort of like, oh, they're disabled, but that's actually what makes them like magically special kind of trope that I want to stop seeing. And that's such a pervasive one in like fantasy. I think there's a lot of room for much better disabled rep that is like, yeah, they are disabled. This is a disability that impacts them in a real way, but that they have this accommodation for, and like that's how they get through it. It's something I am, in regards to disability rep, I'm autistic, so I am kind of looking at autistic rep a lot and the ways that it is sometimes very good and sometimes awful, and so
yeah. Thanks for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to go a much more boring direction, which is that in my headcanon, I'm very excited about the corporate politics within the Vermilion Council, because there seem to be these different authors of these spell books who are collecting things. Like I did this whole long post on Discord about all of the different art that had similarities and speculating as to what the factions within the Vermilion Council were out, like collecting the Lightbringer books versus the Salamander Monk. So
you're gonna be disappointed with the reality.
What do you mean?
Nothing.
Okay. Oh man. All right. Well, maybe I'll just try and preempt it with my own fanfic. This just gets my.
I'll read it and I'll be like, "Wow, sharp eye you got there. That's exactly right."
There you have it. So Schmendrix wants more bureaucrats in.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh boy. Okay. We have laws, so we need the law writers.
Write what you know. That's what they say.
Yeah. I do think the Vermilion Council ought to get a little bit more screen time on some cards. I've definitely been. I want to do something so big for the time set because it's going to be the final one, and just the fact that we have such a good cast of characters planned for that set. It's just got to be something, but I don't know what it is yet. And it's getting closer and closer.
Jericho and Rowan definitely are some of the more lore heavy Phoenix born, so that's going to be
an epic showdown.
Yeah. Really fun to
they were
them.
so fun. I loved writing and coming up with the concept for Rowan. That's probably one of the most fun chapters in Ash's design history for me, and figuring out how to make that dang discovery card work. Oh, he was garbage for like the longest time. And I thought he was still pretty weak on release. We hadn't really cracked the code with him, I don't think, but I feel like he came out just fine, and he's
Yeah, you
just
got to sit
really
Carl on
cool.
that question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just watched Carl just absolutely masterfully play Rowan today, and it was like, oh, okay, because he's one of my worst win rates. So it's like, okay, I could learn something.
Yeah, playing Rowan, I feel like, is such a flex. It's so cool.
It's tough. It's a different. It's a different plan than a lot
Yeah.
of the rest of them. I wanted to circle back just because we obviously, I think we hammered Nick a lot about general game design, but Shmen, you were mentioning about sort of being more welcoming for new members and also inclusivity. It made me think of because we are not without our own past issues on the Discord. We once had a relatively new member join the community, and as a result, ultimately of Hope being released and misusing pronouns, a huge argument and discussion that I thought ultimately was very insightful and proved useful in the end occurred over, I think it was multiple hours, if not half a day. I wanted to know from you, Flora, what, like, if you reflect, how was that handled, or what, how could it have been handled perhaps better, in terms of, I don't know, I don't want to say, convincing or whatever, but at the time it definitely felt, on one hand, it was great to see the community rallying behind sort of a shared view about inclusivity. But at the same time, I thought to myself, is this going on the other side where it's 50 people coming out and being very adamant and not, I don't know. It was just a very complex situation that day. And I would be interested to know what your thoughts were.
Yeah, I'll say I kind of set the ball rolling on that with just a message of like, hey, please stop misgendering Hope, and then kind of just step back because I was getting upset. I'd had a long day. It had been a recurring problem. I tried to just say something nice, and they kind of said like, no, I'm not going to. And I was like, okay, I'm stepping back. I'm letting everyone else handle this. And I definitely appreciated everyone kind of jumping in and being like, no, like this is the most minor of requests that you are unwilling to do here, and the way that all resolved.
Yeah. I think the most straightforward thing in a situation like this is just defer to the Discord community rules. And if the rules aren't clear enough on a particular situation, that can be amended. But instead of kind of leaving it in the hands of the collective to kind of self-regulate these conflicts, I think that is a nice way to keep things clear and direct. It's what you agree to when you join the server, and you can be kicked from it for breaking those rules. So it's as simple as that, I think.
I agree, Nick. I mean, I think the moderation rules should take precedence. I also think, from a community standpoint, and I will admit, I think one of my challenges as an ally, which I aspire to be, is trying to appropriately walk the line between backing up people who are more directly affected by comments like that, and also not, and leaving enough space to give people a way of updating their understandings in a way that's like kind and an invitation instead of a more aggressive, don't do that. But I do think that's an important line to walk, and I don't think we should read these situations necessarily as successful or unsuccessful because the person who was misgendering Hope decided to leave. Like, I think that's ultimately their decision. I don't think it was a moderator inspired move. And I think the conversation was intense and that a lot of people were participating. But I think overall, I thought the conversation tried to be quite kind and offer multiple invitations for that person to update their understanding. And I think if someone ultimately decides to leave, we should ask hard questions about how we participated in the conversation, but I don't think that in and of itself is a failure. You know, I think that person made a choice that made sense for them. And it also, you know, it's unfortunate, but it is important to protect folks in the community and maintain the inclusiveness. So it's a very tricky situation, but I think generally if we participate with good intent, there'll be good outcomes.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, very well said.
Yeah, so I guess just to close it out, it's late where you both are, but Nick, curious if you have any aspirations for like what the community of Ashes can be. I think we've settled into a hopefully growing but still quite niche little community that's fosters really close relationships. Like, is that what you'd like to see? What do you want for the Ashes community?
I think our small community is one of its greatest strengths, just FYI.
I do think there's something special to that, and there's definitely a desire for continued growth. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, I think just taking everything with gratitude is very valuable. I know what it's like to lose the Ashes community once. I hope it doesn't happen again. And I think the way we brought back Ashes, it's well set up to continue for a very long time and be sustainable at this size. So I love the personal connections that people are having. I love the variety of ways to play people are enjoying and cultivating themselves. And even if people disappear, sometimes they come back. And I think as long as we're
Philly, Philly cheese, longtime player.
Oh yes,
waiting on that moment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just grateful for what we have, and I hope the game continues to bring joy for people every day they engage with it.
You've nailed that.
Thanks.
Except today, because Schmed beat me horribly. Every other day is great.
I played spoiler. Sorry. Flora, what about you? Any closing thoughts about what we can be as a community?
Yeah, I definitely think as far as like growing, it's so great to see new players come in, and it's such a thing where like there is definitely, I wish I could like show up to my game store and have people who know Ashes and want to play, but at the same time, like this is such a tight community, and I think we would in some way lose something if it were a way bigger. Like I don't think we'd be nearly the same if it was like the size of Magic.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Another thing I do like to see grow is the playtest team. If you really like playing Ashes and want to participate in the back end of how it's made.
I jumped in AshCon, and it's been a ton of fun.
Yeah, Flora joined. She's been a huge contributor.
It's just fun. We have a good time over there, I think. You get to see me completely lose my mind every other day.
That's not true. It's only happened like once.
There's some things I'm excited to be able to talk about.
Yeah. And then I do just want to thank the admins of the Ashes Discord for volunteering their time to create that community. And it's something that Plaid Hat should have done themselves, but that these members have taken it upon themselves to create this, and just to be able to have that is a very generous gift, and I'm very grateful for that.
Well, thank you. We're very lucky to have you both.
Yeah, amazing.
Both on the podcast, and around the Discord, and I'm lucky to live pretty close to Flora. We should get together and play our Sunhold games in
What?
person.
Play some Red Rains together at some point. We've been
Yeah.
talking about it since it came out, but just haven't ever.
Yeah. We almost ran a heist at the local Denver post office to try and break our stuck Red Rains boxes out of the mail. But yeah, it was great to talk to you both. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you so much
very
for
much.
having
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night.